الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلق الله محمد وآله الطاهرين. We are on lesson 13 today, and we have previously explained that religious sources are based on three different aspects of the life of the Ma'soom, the life of the infallible. His statements, his actions, and his tacit approval. However, it is not only these three things that one can derive religious understandings as far as jurisprudence is concerned. There is something else that can be used as a source for legislation. And this is called the way of the conduct of devout or faithful people, or السيرة المتشرعة. السيرة المتشرعة basically looks at the feeling, the overall feeling of how religious people conducted themselves during the era of the Ma'sumin alayhim salam. This is what we call khabar hadsi. Hadas means conjecture. It means inner feeling that one can gain through a certain level of conviction. This is opposite to khabar hissi, or sensual information or sensual narration. And that is, of course, what we had already spoken about as far as ahadith are concerned, and traditions and what's not. So in reality, when we assume that there is no particular tradition about a certain issue, but the way that the devout, the way that the faithful, religious, observant Muslims were conducting themselves at the time of the Ma'sumin, from that we can understand that it must be based on something. We might not have the source of that particular tradition. It might not have reached us for whatever reason there may be, but it is coming from something. A unanimous way of conducting themselves as far as them being devout and faithful means that they must have based their actions on something that was derived from the Ma'sumin alayhim salam. And this is why al-Sira al-Mutashari'a is one way of establishing a ruling for legislation. Now, what could be an example for this? Of course, we explained what khabar hadsi means, we explained what khabar hissi means, and we come to know that through hearing or seeing or something, we derive a khabar hissi, a sensual tradition or sensual information. Khabar, of course, means news, information. As for al-khabar al-hadsi, or conjectured information or tradition, it means that there is transferring of information, but not in the three types that were related to the Ma'soom, in his statements, his actions, or his tacit approval. Of course, with the larger the gap is, the more difficulty there is as far as access to any of these three aspects of the life or the biography of the Ma'soom as far as sources are concerned. So, what is an example of a khabar hadsi? A khabar hadsi, an example for a khabar hadsi, is if there were fuqaha, jurists, scholars who existed during the time of the infallibles and or close to the time of the infallibles, and they had agreed on a particular, not agreed as in, agreed in the sense of they had issued a fatwa on the permissibility of a particular thing. And there are no traces of this particular verdict based on a tradition or something like that. So where did these early ulama, these early scholars close to the era of the Ma'sumin, where did they get this view? It must be from somewhere. We might not have, as I said, we might not have access to this particular narration, this particular statement. So what we can conclude from the verdicts that has been issued by early jurists is that it is based on a reputable source, and therefore it is called shuhra or mashhur. And something that is mashhur or something that is based on shuhra is a source of evidence, and it is something that can be taken as a reference for legislating. Now, this means that when a jurist comes across a shuhra fatwa or a mashhur view of early scholars close to the era of the Ma'sumin, that khabar that they have is not sensual information or sensual tradition. It is conjectured, it is based on hiss, inner feeling. One derives it from within themselves. This is very similar to ijma' as well. Ijma' or consensus is similar to shuhra. However, of course, ijma' is stronger in its level of legitimacy than shuhra. Ijma' means the overall consensus of ulama on a particular view in jurisprudence, and this is why they call it ijma'ul fuqaha, the consensus of jurists. So if any of these three cases, and we will repeat them again, number one was as-sira al-mutasharri'a, the conduct of devout people. Number two, al-shuhra, something that is well known or famous or reputed, whatever way we want to translate it. And number three, ijma', consensus. They can be used if they lead us to a level of itmi'nan, a level of assurity, a level of certainty that there is a source for this view coming from the ma'soom. Then this can be considered as hujjah, it can be considered as evidence to be used as far as legislation is concerned. Now, of course, on the other side, if one doesn't achieve that level of certainty and does not gain assurance from these sources, what is it that they do? Ilm al-usul, ilm usul al-fiqh, the science that we are studying, deals with the case of how one is able to elevate something from the level of doubt or shak to the level of dhan or speculation. If one was to do so, then of course something that is considered as dhan in certain areas of Usul al-Fiqh will also be classified as hujjah and evidence that can be legitimately used in deriving a shari'i ruling. Now, of course, dhan in the text I translated as supposition, but there is no unanimous English translation or equivalent to what dhan is. Dhan is a lower level of yaqeen, certainty, and a higher level of shak, which is doubt. Of course, if there is something that indicates that we have found evidence to these certain things, then of course we are able to use them in the shari'i ruling. Now, what is the difference between the way of conduct or the conduct of devout people, as-sira al-mutasharri'a, and the conduct of rational people, as-sira al-uqala'iyya? We have mentioned in our previous sessions this term, as-sira al-uqala'iyya, the conduct of rational people, and we have explained that they can be used to support an argument in deriving a shari'i ruling. However, what is the difference between these two terms, between as-sira al-mutasharri'a, the conduct or the way of the conduct of devout people, and as-sira al-uqala'iyya? The difference is, number one, as far as the conduct of rational people is concerned, it relates to what people in general would tend to believe in without being influenced by any religious sources. So it's taken purely from a rational perspective. Whereas as-sira al-mutasharri'a, the conduct of devout, religious people, faithful people, is based on something that is influenced by religious sources. Also, it has nothing to do with the natural tendency of rational people. It's purely something ta'abbudi, it's purely something submissive that comes from the Sharia realm. Difference number two is when it comes to as-sira al-mutasharri'a, it can be used in itself as a source of legislation. Whereas with as-sira al-uqala'iyya, the conduct of rational people, the only time it can be used is if it is endorsed by legislation, by a religious source, if it has support from some kind of or approval from al-shari' al-muqaddas, from the lawgiver. Like, for example, that it has not been opposed, there is no level of opposition directed at this way of conduct of rational people by the shara'. Inshallah, these new terms are clear, especially the khabar hissi and the khabar hadsi are concerned, because they are very important as far as these three issues are concerned. I will repeat the issue of number one, as-sira al-mutasharri'a, number two, shuhra, and number three, ijma', and them being ways of deriving legislation. Al-Khabar al-Hissi is something which is a religious evidence, but is based on hearing or feeling something that Al-Khabar al-Hissi is something based on a religious evidence that comes from either hearing or seeing, as we said, from the statements of the Ma'sumin alayhim salam. Al-Khabar al-Hadsi is something that is indirectly narrated to us through the devout religious people, and it has not reached us, that in its text has not reached us, but only the view or the actions of devout has reached us, and therefore we assume that it can be traced back to the views of the Ma'sumin alayhim salam, and this includes Shuhra, Sira al-Mutasharri'a, and Ijma'. All three of them are a part of Al-Khabar al-Hadsi. And inshallah that is clear. We will continue on with speaking about some of these things in our future classes. And for those interested, please make sure that you refer back to the other texts for further reading to gain a broader understanding of how these terms are used within the context of ilm al-usul. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi tahirin.